All right, perfect. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing started. I apologize, my video is not working today, but maybe that's a good thing. Although I did promise that I am wearing a suit and tie, and I did do my hair for you all today. So uh, just envision that my picture is actually what I look like today. Although that was taken many years ago, and I was much younger then. I do want to introduce myself. My name is Kyle Wersinski. I am the economic development manager over at the city of Beaumont, and Austin Farmer is the representative from the retail coach that's going to be running through the presentation today. I first and foremost want to welcome everyone to the first small business retail workshop that the city of Beaumont has done. I hope you find this presentation informational, but better yet, valuable for your small business. In late 2020, the Beaumont City Council appropriated funds to hire a firm to perform a retail market analysis and to aid the city in retail recruitment. In my profession and across the country, too often economic development departments focus on retail recruitment. So we look at recruiting new businesses and we focus on the next new thing within the city, right? And our city council has had the vision and desire to not only attract new businesses, which is important because it provides residents in the area new shopping, new services, new places to go to recreate, but they also expressed a strong desire to retain existing businesses that we have here today in Beaumont and assist you in your growth. If there was ever a time to help you guys as small businesses, it must be now, as we're in the midst of a global pandemic. The presentation you're going to see today showcases the advanced data and analytics and the research that's been performed by the retail coach on behalf of the city, which is already being used by many of the large retailers that you'll see throughout the country and the nation. Now that we have access to these data sets, we'd like to share how it can be used to help understand your business, your customers, and how your business can grow if you desire to do so. So without further ado, I'm going to kick this thing over to Austin and allow him to go through the presentation. And as we finish, if you guys have discussion points you want to chime in on, have any questions of both Austin or I, go ahead and use the raise hand feature, and we'll go through individually and hit those after the presentation's concluded. Austin, with that, it's up to you. Go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Thank you for joining us. My name's Austin Farmer. I'm a project director here at the Retail Coach. And as Kyle mentioned, the city has hired the Retail Coach to come in and do a retail market analysis. And really what our goal is, and what the goal of the city is to identify where there's retail opportunity in the community, not only just from the outward perspective of where's their opportunity to bring in new retailers or new retail development, but also from an inward perspective in the sense of how do we help our existing business owners or entrepreneurs or anybody that has a shop or restaurant or service in Beaumont really take advantage of some of the data and a lot of the analytics that we're looking at for the market. And so what we want to do during this project, we really have three key objectives in this project with the city. We just started, so we're at the very early phases of this. We're still doing a lot of market research, but ultimately, really we want to study the retail consumer activity in Beaumont. So we want to better understand the Beaumont consumer and really what makes them tick. What are they buying? Where are they buying that from? What goods and services are they leaving the community to go get elsewhere, and really kind of understand where there's opportunity to better meet the needs of that consumer within the city. Second is to identify opportunities to grow and expand the city's retail base. Again, the goal of this project for us is not to come in and replace existing retailers. We want to fill retail gaps, and we love doing that through existing business owners. So if that means that an existing business owner can offer up a new service line or a new product line that meets some of those retail needs, we would rather see that than have to go out and bring in new retailers or new developments. And so really, we want to grow and expand. So if there's opportunities for existing businesses to grow, we want to help do that. And the last part, and really ultimately the reason for what we're doing here today, is that we want to be a resource to local business owners in the city. And we do that in a couple ways. First, like what we'll talk about today is providing data. So those consumer insights, really what's happening in the retail market. And then ultimately recommendations to you as business owners to really identify those opportunities and see how you can leverage those in your business. A little bit about us. We're a national retail consulting and retail recruitment and development firm. And so we've worked in more than 650 communities across 38 states. I manage all of our West Coast projects. So I work all over the state of California, working in other communities in Riverside County, Orange County, really all over the state from north to south. But we've worked all over the country, have a lot of experience in California, and really know the retail market and ultimately what's happening in the state of California. So really excited to have this conversation and to talk about a little bit of our early findings about the city. So a little bit about what we're going to cover today. I don't want to spend too long on the data. I want to go ahead and say everything that we have in this presentation, don't worry about taking detailed notes. We'll make this presentation available to you. This video is actually being recorded as well, and we'll share that out later. But we also have some follow-up materials, and Kyle will be able to get you in contact with us and our firm so we can provide some detailed data specifically for your business as well. But we ultimately want to talk about 4 or 5 key areas today. And the first one's a retail trade area analysis. So we looked at where people are coming from to shop, dine, and get services in the community. And we did that with GPS data from consumer cell phones. And so we wanted to share that with you and share some of those findings and just show you what we're seeing in terms of what that retail trade area looks like. We'll look at a zip code analysis. So identifying the top zip codes that people are coming from to get services and shop and eat in the community. Look at a retail leakage analysis. So ultimately, where are people leaving the community to go buy other goods and services in other places? Retail opportunities. So looking at a retail demand analysis to identify where there might be opportunities to grow your business. And then ultimately a couple of retail trends that we're seeing and some recommendations on how you can leverage those for your business. Kyle, before I start in the retail trade area, anything that I missed in that intro or anything that you want to make sure we touch base on the front end?
No, I think that you covered it perfect. You went over the fact that we are going to be able to provide this video recording. It'll be on the city's YouTube channel once we get it uploaded. And if any of you have any questions that you think of after this presentation, go ahead and give me a call at City Hall or email me, and we'll be happy to help you guys out.
Great, thanks. So I mentioned retail trade area analysis. So what is a retail trade area? Really, the way we define a retail trade area is where people are coming from to shop or eat or get services in the community on a regular basis. And the reason that that's important to us is because most of the time when you just look at a community on a map, you're really underestimating that community. So your population in the 50, 60,000 range doesn't really represent everyone that's coming into and out of the community on a daily basis. And so we really want to define what that retail trade area looks like. So we're able to hand draw that using that GPS data from consumer cell phones. And the way that works is if you on your cell phone, if you have either Apple or Android, if you have one of the top 1,000 apps downloaded on your cell phone and you have your location settings enabled for those apps, we're able to get that location data. It sounds kind of scary, but we get it in bulk, so we don't know what any one individual person is doing. But we can track that to see where people are visiting in the community, what retailers and restaurants they're going to, how frequently they go, what time of day, what day of week. And so it gives us a lot of really valuable information that we're able to use for the city and for local retailers to be able to help identify where that target market is. And so on this next page here, this blue outlined area that you see here on the screen, this kind of weird looking shape, is the primary retail trade area for the city. And we came up with this, we hand drew this retail trade area by plotting all of that GPS data. So we looked at the top 15 retailers and restaurants in the community, and we looked at where people were coming from to really come and shop and eat. And we were able to plot that on the map and then able to go in and actually draw around those boundaries. And Kyle and I were talking about this. I think the thing about these primary retail trade areas that's really interesting is it helps validate some assumptions that people have about their communities. And it also helps kind of shatter some assumptions that you have as well in terms of where you see people coming from, or where you hear about people coming from. And for us, Kyle, I won't speak for you, but I think when we looked at this after we drew around those plotted areas, it really makes a lot of sense in the sense of the communities that you see included in there. Ukaipa, Calamisa, down on this southeast end, you've got Banning and some of Cabazon in here. That really makes sense to us in the sense of how people are traveling into and out of the community, the retail marketplace as it exists right now with the existing retail options, people's workflow of how they go into and out of the community. Kyle, I know you found it pretty interesting and validating looking at that data. What did this tell you in terms of assumptions you had, or did this challenge any assumptions you had about that market?
Austin, it's a good question. What it did was it really validated what we kind of thought was our trade area, although I think it expanded it in not only to the east but also the west. I was under the impression that maybe areas of East Redlands or West Ukaipa wouldn't necessarily venture over to some of our businesses, as there's competition of our businesses further to the west along Interstate 10, not only in Redlands, but in San Bernardino County. And what it shows us is that there are people that probably do that, but they're equal likely to come our direction as well. And as we draw this retail trade area, it really showcases how we have competition around us, but there are opportunities within this polygon that's been drawn up to land certain businesses that don't exist within this area. And as Austin will show you, due to our leakage analysis, we know where people in this trade area are going for services. So it's possible we can identify that and then try to actively recruit those businesses to this area. As it relates to the small businesses, you'll be able to see our growth projections for different industry sets, and this shows you as a small business owner where your primary customers are coming from multiple times a year. So we'll get into it a little bit later, but what this really did was solidify our thoughts and expanded them a little bit further on the customers that are frequenting Beaumont businesses.
Right. And I think one important note here is, you may be looking at this as a business owner and say, hey, we track credit card data. We know where our customers are coming from. It looks different than this. There's a couple of reasons for that. Your business is unique. So this is an aggregate of a lot of the most trafficked businesses in the community. So it may not perfectly align with what you see. The other is that we tend to be a little bit more conservative. When you start drawing these trade areas, it's easy to start clumping in some areas that are kind of iffy or on some of those other borders. We realistically feel like we could probably expand this another 5 to 10% and still not be unrealistic about who that primary shopper is. So people that are shopping in the community weekly and monthly, as opposed to some that come in and out. But that, if it looks different than yours, those are really the two reasons that we see that cause that variation. And we'll talk about this a little bit later and look at a couple of examples, but we'll be able to, for your individual business, if you'd like us to, we can do a cell phone analysis for your business and show you a trade area or a draw area based just off of the cell phone data for your business. So, we can customize that as much as we need to for you to make sure that it's really applicable to you and your business. I think the important thing about this retail trade area is, just the value of having that data that ties those shoppers and diners back to specific areas that they live. And this will come into play for marketing. Let's say on Facebook, if you want to go out and try to draw in new business, we would start with this trade area or some of the zip codes that we'll look at in the zip code analysis. From a community perspective, we've got some of these demographics down here. The trade area on that population for that trade area is just under 156,000, which is really good for a community your size. That's a little bit over 3 times the community population size. And so that's a really good marker when we're out there looking at potential in that retail trade area. It's good to see that not only that population for that entire trade area is pretty strong, but you also have some strong household and average household incomes. So the average household income is 92,000, and the median household income is 68,000. And when we look at that compared to some of those other areas, those are really, we think that there's a lot of retail potential there. A lot of times, especially in Southern California, we'll draw trade areas for communities, and we'll get into certain parts of county land, or there will be large stretches where there's not a lot of population density. And as you get to the outer edges of that retail trade area, you see those demographics go down a lot. But we look at this and see the strength of that, and are really optimistic about how strong that retail trade area is, even knowing that we're not really pushing it to its 100% max, being conservative. So those numbers look really good to us in the sense of just overall market dynamic. This is a little hard to see, but this is a breakdown of some of the demographics for that retail trade area. So that population again is just under 160,000, 156,000. The age distribution, it skews pretty standard to what we would like to see in a community, just in terms of retail. You have a good mix of what age brackets are represented there, all the way from 0 to 9 up to that 65 and older population. But for the most part, that looks really well balanced to us. And it looks like there's opportunity there for retailers and really restaurants that are looking for a wide mix of young families with children, or people that are moving to the suburbs for the first time, as well as some of those older and established couples. Race distribution looks pretty similar to what we would think for the region, especially for the community. And then again, those incomes are really strong, especially when we compare those to some of the surrounding area and then some of the region as a whole. So we're going to talk a little bit about zip codes now. So we looked at that retail trade area based on the cell phone data, and we're able to map it. But we also look at zip codes to see where people are coming from based on zip code. But before I get into this, I just want to put a note real quick. There are a couple of boxes that you can use as we're going through this presentation. If you have questions that you want us to get to at the end, there's a Q&A session where Q&A box that you can actually put questions in. So you should see that on your screen. And there's a chat feature on there as well. So if you'd like to ask questions or put something in there that we need to get to later, please feel free to do that. So on the zip code analysis, what we did is looked at a few key shopping centers in the community, and then we looked at a few individual retailers as well, and looked at where people are coming from based off those zip codes. And I think what's interesting here, going back to the validating the assumptions, is it really kind of opened our eyes to things that we thought we knew about where people were coming from. And then it also kind of opened our eyes to some things that we didn't think were happening. So you'll see on here, there's some places that I didn't expect people to be coming from, like Desert Hot Springs. 1.5% of the traffic to Beaumont Marketplace is coming from Desert Hot Springs. And I think that's really interesting, just given the overall market dynamic. That actually makes sense, because you've got people that are driving into Riverside, or maybe commuting to work and maybe stopping on their way home to grab something. But to me, that's really interesting. For the most part, you'll probably see a lot of these communities and zip codes that you'd expect. And you'll notice that it differs by type of retailer and type of shopping center as well. So on Beaumont Marketplace, you've got Ross, Best Buy, Bed Bath & Beyond, some of those big box retailers, along with Aldi and fast food. So you've got a decent mix of retailers in there. So really that makes sense to us that you would see a kind of a skewing of where that population of customers is coming from. Certainly Beaumont with almost 13%. Banning is at just under 8%, 7.85. Yucaipa, San Jacinto makes up almost 3% of that traffic. Hemet, San Jacinto as well down here. And then you'll see as it goes down, you'll start to kind of get to the edges of where that retail trade area is, and you'll get to some of those outer boundaries. But really overall, it looks like there's a lot of people coming into and out of the market from a lot of the surrounding areas, which is a good sign to us that there is opportunity to build off that and to drive some synergy. We looked at Oak Valley Town Center as well, which is the Stater Brothers Center on Oak Valley Parkway and Beaumont Avenue. You'll notice here that because this is more of a neighborhood center than necessarily one of these power centers or big box centers, you're going to see a lot of that traffic is going to skew more local. So almost 25% of that traffic coming from Beaumont, and then you see Banning, Yucaipa, Calamisa, Redlands. So a lot of the traffic from the places you'd expect, but you also start to get some smaller percentages out in some of those further areas. As far as Riverside, Hemet, Moreno Valley, Colton, you've got a lot of those areas that are bringing traffic in and really some of those retail sales. Kyle, I know you and I were talking a little bit earlier about Beaumont Marketplace, and you had thought it was interesting on Desert Hot Springs with the amount of people that were coming in. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, just in the sense of kind of the thought process, or what went through your head when you saw that?
I would love to. So when we talk about Beaumont Marketplace, that's something that was built in 2008, and it was really one of the first power centers beyond the Home Depot and the Walmart, right? And we as staff weren't necessarily sure what the regional draw was going to be for something like that. We had tenants in tow, we had a developer that was putting together the center, but the question back then, especially for the developer and these businesses coming into this market, is Beaumont too risky? Are we going to open up these stores, and are people in this new trade area that hasn't had these type of stores before actually going to shop here or not? And what this data does is it validates that not only are people within the area shopping there, but it actually is what I would reference as regional power shopping centers. We're getting people from far outside Beaumont city limits going through here. I think primarily you see people that are going to be going to and from work along Interstate 10. We all know the traffic numbers on I-10 are very high, notwithstanding the pandemic and the stay-at-home order. But getting past that, we understand a tremendous amount of people drive along that freeway every single day. What we think of when you see people from Desert Hot Springs and other places to the south as well as to the east coming to our center, when they have a Ross out in that area as well, is that they're going to and from work towards the west, and they're coming home, and they know that Beaumont has this center, and they've been there before. They know that the stores are good. They want to shop there, so it's easier for them in Desert Hot Springs to swing by this Beaumont shopping center than it is to go further into the Coachella Valley to Palm Desert, Cathedral City, Rancho Mirage, and the like. So I think that's why we're seeing those types of things for the marketplace. And as you'll see on the next couple of slides, for eateries, you see kind of the same trend as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we find all that, again, just to be validating and ultimately insightful in how we're approaching the retail landscape as a whole, just throughout this entire process. But also, again, how insightful and helpful it can be for local businesses, just in terms of looking for that target audience, or understanding where people are coming from, where they're stopping, where they're buying goods and services. Looking at Walmart, you see a lot of that same mix in there. You start to see that you're pulling people from a little bit further away. So you'll see those same top three or four. You've got Beaumont, Yucaipa, Banning, Desert Hot Springs again, San Jacinto, Hemet, Calamisa, Redlands. So really a lot of those surrounding areas where we're starting to expand that market a lot. Same for Home Depot, which is relatively close to Walmart, just down the road. You've got a little bit more local audience there. You've got people that are coming more so from Banning, Yucaipa, Calamisa, San Jacinto, Hemet. So you're starting to see a lot of those areas really overlap and really validate again that that's where those shoppers are coming from. Same thing for Kohl's. You've got a good mix of some of those more local customers with a decent mix of some of those that are coming from a little bit further away. A few more that we looked at on the restaurant side was Panera Bread. So Panera Bread, again, with some of these restaurants, you'll see some of them will have more local audiences. Certainly places that you would go for lunch or a casual dinner, maybe something fast casual like Panera Bread, or quick serve like Raising Cane's. You're going to see a little bit more local audience there, and then you'll see a little bit of a skew on some of your casual sit down restaurants. but really, not to keep saying the same things over and over again, but really interesting in the sense of where those people are coming from. Cathedral City, almost 1.5% of the customers at Panera Bread were coming from Cathedral City, San Jacinto, Cabazon, Hemet, Highland, San Jacinto, really some of those other areas. Raising Cane's, you'll see similar mix there, but not quite as local with some of those. I think it's going to be interesting to see over time with Raising Cane's how that changes, because they haven't been open as long as some of these others have. But you start to see Indio, 4.7% of that traffic is coming from Indio, which to me is significant, because that's not something that you would expect for someone to be coming from Indio to get Raising Cane's or to get fast food. Coachella's on there as well, so you're starting to see some of that Coachella Valley traffic. And then for Chili's, you'll see some of that mix of the local and some of those further areas as well, further away areas as well. Most of that traffic being Beaumont, Banning, Yucaipa. Some of that I think is going to be relatively more local, because you're sitting down and staying somewhere longer as opposed to driving to go eat somewhere. So there's a little bit more of a time investment, but there is still a good mix of where you're starting to see some of those people come from, some of those outer edges. And so why is that important? We don't want to sit here and just spew numbers and stats and data at you all day. The reason that's important is it really validates to us that people are coming from outside the community to shop and dine and get services in Beaumont. And so it's really important for us from a small business perspective that we want to help understand what those patterns are and where those people are coming from, so that you can take advantage of it for your business specifically. So just to recap some of those top draw areas that we see in that zip code analysis: we're Banning, Yucaipa, Calamisa, San Jacinto, Hemet. And the opportunity there, I think, is really marketing to those surrounding communities and growing that customer base outside of just Beaumont, or maybe just Beaumont and Banning and some of the more local surrounding areas. Really trying to leverage that in the sense of, how do you market to that community? If you get on Facebook and target by zip code, or where's there an opportunity to expand for your business specifically? And again, we have tons of data that we can customize to your business. So we can actually run a cell phone analysis specifically for your business. So we can get a lot of that data that you may be looking at it saying, hey, that's great, but we're not Walmart, we're not Home Depot, we're a boutique, or we're a florist, or whatever that may be. We're a small restaurant. We can customize that to you. We know that you're not the same as some of those larger retailers, but we still think that data is valuable. They use it. Most Fortune 500 retailers use a lot of that cell phone analysis. So we just want to make sure that you have it available as well. This slide is retail leakage. So equally as important to us as identifying who's coming into the community to buy retail goods and services, we want to know when people are leaving, where they're going. And so on this slide, we're looking at a list of shopping centers and restaurants that people are leaving the community to go either shop or eat at most frequently. This is a small sample. We have a huge database that shows us all the places people are leaving. We can target that by business, but it's interesting to look through some of these in the sense of shopping centers. You'll see a lot of things on here where you go, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. They may have something that we don't have, where someone might be going to shop and stay, or stop and stay at 2 or 3, 4 stores, maybe grab food. Really looking at, okay, what shopping centers are people going to, what specific retailers. When we look at the list of the top shopping centers that people are leaving to go to, you'll see Tri-City Corporate Center in San Bernardino, Sun Lakes Village in Banning, Citrus Plaza and Mountain Grove at Citrus Plaza in Redlands, the Outlet Mall in Cabazon, Ontario Mills. So that would be one where you're going to go and you're going to spend a little bit of time there, probably go to a few stores. Victoria Gardens in Rancho Cucamonga, Pavilion at Redlands in Redlands, Moreno Valley, Riverside. So really start to see that there's some opportunity there in that space to say, okay, where can we pull some of that back in? And ultimately our goal with a lot of this data is to be able to help you as a business owner, be able to capture some of that traffic that's leaving the market. We want people to be able to buy everything they can in the community and be able to stay here, because that's going to help them spend their money in the community. They're not going to have to drive, and ultimately grow the retail base within the community. In terms of restaurants, I thought Corky's Kitchen and Bakery in Ukaipa was interesting to me, that almost 15% of Beaumont traffic goes to Corky's. Red Robin Burgers in Redlands, Chick-fil-A in Redlands, and then you've got In-N-Out, Olive Garden, BJ's Restaurant and Brew House, so mix of Hemet, San Bernardino, and then you've got a few others in Mesa. But again, we know that this isn't going to necessarily be specific to your business, so we'll customize this for you. We can show you the leakage from your business to show you specifically where people are leaving to go and shop at retailers that are like your store or restaurant. So I have a couple of examples I wanted to show you. I'm going to switch my screen here real quick and pull that up. But Kyle, is there anything you wanted to add to this point while I get that pulled up?
Yeah, sure. So why Austin's pulling this thing up, what we wanted to do is one, showcase the amount of data that we have. And I think based on our discussion so far, you can see that we have it, right? And we have data sets, we have zip codes, we have cell phone data, we have demographics with incomes and all that fine and dandy. Sounds a little bit interesting, may sound even more overwhelming as a small business owner. So you're thinking, okay, city, you have this stuff. How does it pertain to me? So what I wanted Austin to do is take a couple of our businesses in town, and I got their approval prior to this meeting, where we could really dive into the data analytics for their business. So what we do is we geofence the area. So we create a area in which we're tracking that cell phone data and other data sets, and we're able to showcase exactly who's going to these individual businesses, what times, where they're coming from, what days, all of that fun stuff. So we wanted to show a little bit of the applicability of what we have together, in order to provide some examples to the other businesses that are on the line of what resources you would have available to you if you give me a call, shoot me an email, and then I get you contact with Austin, and they start running through this data one-on-one with you guys.
Yep, great. And I'll talk through this a little bit. If you can see on my screen, this is our backend system that we use for our cell phone analysis. And so we're looking at the craft lounge, tap room, and bottle shop. And so what we've done is we've geofenced the location, and it gives us some data about the specific trends of where people are coming from, and an estimated number of visits, and really kind of some detailed data about the business that can be really helpful. I think everybody can, if you can see this chart right here, this is estimated visits by week. And I think everybody can recognize COVID here in the middle, with the shutdowns and everything that's been happening with COVID, and then the rebound as well. But it's really insightful. So when we look at retail trade areas, we can look at the trade area specifically for the craft lounge and the tap room bottle shop. And like I mentioned, it doesn't look exactly like the primary retail trader for the community as a whole, but you start to get a feel for some of the pockets of where people are coming from to really frequent your business. And so when we look at this from a regional perspective, you can see that you're pulling in a lot of the areas that we're seeing on that zip code analysis, right? You're getting people from San Bernardino, Redlands, that mix of some of those core communities that neighbor Beaumont, Calamisa, Ukaipa, San Jacinto, Hemet, really a lot of those areas that you'd expect. You're also getting some of the far edge of Coachella Valley with Palm Springs and some of the desert communities out there. The thing I think is really interesting though is when we look at things like the customer journey, so we can see where people came from before they actually came to your location, and then we can see where they went to after as well. And that's really been helpful for us when we work with small businesses to kind of understand your customers' thought process and where they're coming from and where they're going. As an example here for the craft lounge, you look at, you've got a large percentage of people that are coming from home, but you also have people coming from some of these other shopping centers. And so maybe they're coming after they had gone shopping. Maybe they're coming by to pick up a drink or take something to go. You got people coming from Domenico's, Marla's, and then when they're leaving, you can see that they're going other places as well. We looked at a different snapshot earlier in terms of, this is just the data from the last 12 months. We looked at a snapshot from January 1st, 2019 through the end of this year earlier. And it was really interesting because you could kind of see the flow of where people were going from. You'd have people coming from either a restaurant or an event to come and either, grab a drink, hang out with friends, or get. And then as you saw that go through there, you could see they were going to the gamers lounge and some other places. So it looked like they were maybe going and staying out after hours. So maybe after the craft lounge closed, they were going to a couple of other places. And it's really interesting to kind of see that and understand that thought process. We can see customer journey routes. So we can see traffic routes and really help understand from a process of the commuting aspect of how people are coming through there. We can see the visits for hourly breakdown for when customers are actually coming. And this is based off of the actual day, the time of day that they're coming to your location. So for Craft Lounge, you're seeing that be later in the afternoon, which makes a lot of sense. It's going to align with the store hours and when people are typically frequenting some of those tap rooms and breweries. And then we can break it down by day of week as well. So for Craft Lounge, it makes sense that you're going to have most of your traffic on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then we can look at length of stay as well. So there's a ton of data here that we can use to help you as a business. This being just one of those examples, but we feel like it's powerful data. A lot of the largest retailers in the world use that data, and you through the city through contracting us, you have access to that as a business owner. And so we want you to be able to leverage that and take advantage of that. That's something that the city has stressed to us multiple times is, we're doing this as much to focus on new retail opportunities as we are to expand and help existing businesses. So this is a big initiative and something Kyle's been pushing us on a lot to be able to make this available to you. Kyle, is there anything on this example that you wanted to talk about, or any data that you thought might be interesting or practical?
Sure. I thought that the Domenico's link, so 1% of people, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's meaningful because it happens, come from Domenico's over to the Craft Lounge. It shows that most people go home. What I found most interesting about this is we're able to identify this data in 2020, right? Now, as new outlets open throughout the city, if the city has an initiative or we have additional development within that downtown area, what's the likeliness of patrons going to the craft lounge and maybe to a restaurant that's nearby, or maybe to a similar type of use, or something that has entertainment in it, you know what I mean? So we don't have that now, but having this data in place and having a couple years to work with you guys is going to allow us to also not only track things as they move on today, but as we move into the future. I'm anxious for the movie theater to open there down there on Second Street, primarily because the residents within this area and probably the trade area have been asking for that type of amenity for years. But I'd love to be able to geo fence that location once it's up and running, when COVID's over, and see the linkages on where did people go before they went to the movies, where are they going post movie, to see the real draw of that entertainment facility within the city and how it augments, um, most likely positively, to other businesses within Beaumont.
Yeah. And I think an example of how this data is practical and useful for retailers is, we looked at this for a community up in the Modesto area, and there was a bar downtown that when the restaurants nearby closed, the patrons would go over to the bar, and so they would go eat, and then when the restaurants closed, they would move over to the bar, and then there wasn't really any option for people that might have gone to the bar later that night to get any food. And so we realized that they kept frequenting each other and going back and forth. And so the bar actually partnered up with the restaurant across the street, where people could come to the bar, order food at the bar, and they would actually walk it over to the restaurant, and the restaurant would come and deliver the food across the street to the bar. And so I think there's opportunities like that to kind of identify some carryover and crossover that you can take advantage of, whether you're collaborating with other businesses or identifying a way to kind of work into that pathway of how people are traveling from one place to another. It's been really valuable for some of the businesses we've worked with in other communities. I want to take a look real quick. I want to leave some time for Q&A through just another example real quick, and this is Class E consignments. So we did the same thing here where we geofenced the location, and we're able to look at some of the data there, and you'll see a little bit of a difference in that retail trade area when you're looking at, okay, there is some overlap, but it's also your heat spots and where you're pulling the most people from are a little bit different than other businesses. And so you can see that in Ukaipa and in some of those other areas.
Austin,
So yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're still seeing the slideshow presentation. If you want to flip over to the background portal. There we go. Perfect.
Sorry about that. So you're seeing in here where you've got maybe some differences. So if we go back to the craft lounge, you can see that there's some similarity in some of those surrounding communities that are just bordering Beaumont and touch with them, but you're also seeing some other hotspots, and you can start to see how by business you can really hone in on who your customer is and where people are coming from and where there's pockets of opportunity in there. You also see that customer journey is different, right? So you've got people that are coming from some of these other specific retailers. They may have gone to Walmart and not found what they were looking for at Walmart, or some of these others, they might have gone to one of the retailers in Beaumont Marketplace, not found it, and said, hey, I think Classy Consignments might have that. I'm going to go check there. And then likewise, they're going to some of those other retailers on their way home as well. So some really valuable insight there. You look at the hourly visits here. This, I would imagine, aligns with when the store is open. So probably open around 9 and close at 6. And so you start to see a mix of when people are coming in and when people are shopping most frequently, and where there's opportunity there to maybe look at how to expand your hours, or to maybe focus on key areas or staff at certain times of the day. And then looking at the daily visits, you've got a mix of mostly weekday traffic with Friday and Saturday traffic, Friday being the busiest day, and then Saturday being close second to Wednesday there. And then we have length of stay as well, so you can see how long people are staying. But really just wanted to highlight this and give you a couple of examples. I know we're talking about a lot of big retailers and a lot of community-wide stuff, but really just wanted to dial in and give some examples on how we can make this practical to you, and how we can give you the best data possible to help you expand in that retail space. So I'm going to switch back here and talk about retail opportunity. Part of our process, after we look at all of the retail trade area, we look at the zip code analysis, where people are coming from. We like to identify what we call retail leakages or retail opportunities. And ultimately where we see leakages is where people are going, like we just talked about, but the opportunities is where we see growth demand in the retail market. And so this data is for the primary retail trade area, and it's individual NAICS code or NAICS codes for retail categories where there is growth or demand growth across that primary retail trade area over the next 5 years. And so when we look at this helps us identify where there's opportunities for existing businesses to maybe expand product lines, or to if you're an entrepreneur or you're interested in potentially becoming a franchisee, where you could invest that money, or where there might be a potential franchise that would work for you that's going to fill a gap or be in a high demand area in the community. And so we have a ton of data in here. All this data is going to be available, and you can get these reports from Kyle, so we'll share that with you. But I wanted to highlight a couple of examples of some things that we're seeing. So for cosmetics, beauty supplies, and perfume stores, there's almost 5% positive annual growth for the next 5 years. So you're seeing that compound annual growth being almost 5%. There's opportunity for someone to fill some of those voids. That 366,000 is not a huge number. That's not something that a cosmetic store is going to look at, and it's going to push them over the edge to come to the market. but it's something that realistically and practically a local retailer could step in and fill that void. I'm working in another community in California where a local pharmacy owner actually brought his daughter in. Their Target closed recently, and so a lot of women that were buying makeup at Target couldn't get that brand and couldn't get the brands they wanted anymore. Broke off a wing of the pharmacy and started carrying a lot of cosmetics. And they've done so well with the cosmetics in the store that they're actually eating up more space inside the pharmacy to sell cosmetics. And so I think there's opportunities like that that make a lot of sense for a local business owner or maybe a smaller retailer. Look at a couple of other categories where there's a lot of growth. Sporting goods stores, there's $2.3 million in demand growth potential in just sporting goods stores. If you lump in some of the other supporting sporting good hobby stores, you're looking at 5 to $8 million in opportunity within that category. Pet and pet supply stores, there's almost $1.4 million in opportunity and demand growth over the next 5 years. And then in food service and restaurant space, there's a lot of growth, anywhere from 3.5% up to almost 5% of annual growth across the food services and drinking places. So that's broken up between drinking places being bars, tap rooms, breweries, and then all the way into some of the restaurant categories. So full service restaurants, there's almost $20 million in demand growth projected over the next 5 years. So that's almost 5% growth, all the way down through to limited service, cafeterias, and even just snack and alcohol and beverage bars. So really a lot of opportunity in some of those categories where if you're looking at the market or you're a local business owner and you want to expand, maybe you're a bar and you're thinking about, hey, could we support a restaurant or could we bring in food and sell food as well as the alcohol? There's certainly opportunities for that. We think that the data supports it. And, that's where we would look in terms of where we see a lot of high quality potential for some of the existing business owners or entrepreneurs in the community. Kyle, did you want to talk about any of those specific categories or anything that you thought was interesting when you looked through this data?
The first and foremost, for a point of reference, and we went over this before, but the compound annual growth percentage, we see numbers that are over 1.5%, some are over 3%, in some instances over 4 or even 5%. Could you put those percentages in perspective for the attendees of this meeting?
Yep.
Are those okay numbers? Are they great numbers? Are they not so great numbers? You know what I mean?
They're really good numbers, borderline great numbers. Anything that's in the 3 to 5% range is really strong. So that's typically what a lot of large national retailers and big box stores will look for, is that 3 to 5% compound annual growth. Anything over 1.5% is good, especially when it's projected out over those 5 years. So when we look at this and we're thinking in terms of retail opportunity, we see a lot of opportunity, and there seems to be opportunity in pretty much every category, even if it's only 1% or 1.5%. That's actually a really good number. A lot of communities, when you look at their retail trade area, which is what this isn't just the city limits, it's that entire retail trade area. You'll see that there's a decrease in some of that demand growth or that annual growth rate. But for Beaumont, you're actually seeing a lot of those in that 3 to 5% range, which is a really, really strong signal that there is a lot of opportunity and that it is a growth retail market. You're not oversaturated. You're not competing at the level that a lot of other communities are. So it puts you in a really good spot.
Thank you. And so the last thing I wanted to hint on this, and you kind of touched on it when you were discussing the competitiveness within the regions. So for everyone watching and for whoever may watch this video afterwards, these compounding annual growth percentages for each different type of industry represent the annual growth within that trade area. That's what Austin just said. So note that we would like you guys to utilize these services to hopefully secure some of this growth percent in Beaumont, because the growth demand is out there. We know that it's going to grow by 2026 and further on. if someone else within that trade area, for say Calamasa, Banning, Ukaipa, put in new stores, or if their local businesses look at items, and they see there's demand and there's growth, and they lock that down, it's going to take away from the potential that of what we could retain within the city. So I want people to understand that this potential is out there. We know about it, and hopefully we can all work together to take advantage of this data set and bring these dollars to your businesses, as opposed to having your competition across the way take advantage of this growth that we know is going to be coming.
Absolutely. So to wrap up before we get into questions, we really are focused on being practical and how we can help you. To Kyle's point, we want to leverage the data the best way possible for you as a local business owner. So a couple of retail trends and recommendations, on the heels of COVID, and knowing that COVID is still very much a reality, just wanted to make some recommendations and some trends that we're seeing. So the first one would be market to that entire retail trade area. Don't underestimate how large that potential population is for you, for a target customer. There's a lot of people coming into and out of the community. Use the top zip codes to target potential shoppers outside the city. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. The easiest and most practical way is to use social media. So within Facebook and Instagram and some of the other social media platforms, you can actually target customers by zip code. And so that's where we would start, is look at some of those zip codes, look at some of the communities that are in that retail trade area, and really test that. See if there's an opportunity, if you're doing digital marketing or online advertising, see if you can grow that way and find those opportunities by targeting those potential customers. We've seen a lot of people that have done that and thought, we're not really going to get much out of this. And they start to see a lot of that customer base that's coming into the community already will actually come and stop and eat, or stop and look around if it's a boutique or a store or a shop. So there's a lot of potential and a lot of opportunity on that front. The second is be flexible and accessible. I know most of you have probably already incorporated a lot of these components just throughout COVID, but really be flexible and accessible. Offer curbside pickup or delivery if you can. It's something that's just absolutely necessary in today's environment. COVID has driven a ton of additional adoption on online ordering. So most large retailers, most large restaurant chains are all investing heavily in curbside pickup and local delivery. And so that's something that if you haven't done that yet, I would really emphasize that and try your best to incorporate that into the business. If possible, if you're a brick and mortar store that's in an inline space and you have a couple of parking spaces in front of your store, try to have a dedicated parking space for pickup orders. If you're not doing that, that's one of the key things that has really helped a lot of businesses survive, is being flexible and having that online order, having that pickup, the local delivery. That's something that is just absolutely going to be necessary really moving forward. A lot of the retailers and restaurants that we work with that have never traditionally been in the online order or delivery space have all gone in that direction. And most of the new quick serve and fast casual restaurants that we're seeing be built that don't have traditional drive-through components to them, or they've traditionally been in dine-in only, have all gone to where their new concepts have at least a pickup window and a drive-through as part of their site requirements. And so that's something that we keep hammering that to everyone that we can, because we're going to see an even larger integration between that online and offline world. And the more you're positioned for that, the more success you're going to have, especially in a COVID and post-COVID world. And the last one is make sure you're open when people are actually shopping. We'll look at this with some of the specific stuff that we'll run for your businesses and some of the reports that we'll do as we follow up. But most retail purchases actually occur after 4 p.m. I believe it's still somewhere on the order of 80% of in-store physical brick and mortar retail purchases happen after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so if you're open from 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, really consider maybe expanding your hours. Maybe try opening from 10 to 6 or 10 to 7 or 11 to 7, because there's a lot of unrealized sales that happen after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, really in that 6 to 7 o'clock time frame. So if you're not open in that afternoon time frame, really consider that afternoon evening time frame. That's really big. The other part of that is consistency. So consider syncing your store hours with other surrounding retailers or businesses, because want to come and maybe stop in a store or maybe grab a drink or grab some food, they might want to stick around and go other places. And so if they come to your restaurant or your store and you're the only one open within a walking distance, then that may keep them from coming back, because they might think, oh, well, we want to do something after, so we're not going to go stop there. So really consider whether it's, if it's a block of businesses, it's downtown, however you define that, consider syncing those up so that when people come, there's some synergy around, the locations and the things that are open. So I'll end there. That's really where, we want to open up the Q&A and see if there's any specific questions that you have, not only just about the data and our process, but if there's anything else that you want to know about in terms of, retail development or retail market. We'd love to answer some of your questions. We have that Q&A box, so if you want to type those, we can field those now. And Kyle, I'll leave it up to you if you want to field those questions, and maybe take a few and then let us know when we're ready.
You got it.
So one of the questions that we've been getting a lot recently is just in relation to COVID, what we're seeing across the state of California in terms of what's happening with just retail in general. I think it's really positive, and we're encouraged by the fact that some of these lockdowns have been lifted and some of those restrictions are getting out of the way. I'll tell you this, we had a conversation with an economist last week who was giving a presentation at a symposium in Kansas City, and they have estimated that there's $3 billion in pent up demand. And so we think that the COVID recovery is probably going to happen between the first quarter of this year and the second quarter. Their estimates from the economist perspective was that they think that we'll be back to 90% across the country from a retail perspective by the end of June, which I think is really encouraging. So I think now that we're out of the election cycle, we're getting to the point where some of these restrictions are lifted. We're pretty optimistic about what's happening in terms of the rebound and where we see retail going. We also have a lot of conversations with retailers that are starting to expand. And what we're seeing from some of the large national retailers and developers is that they're really looking at the first and second quarter to continue that expansion that they had in 2020. That is, they had put on pause and said, we can't really do anything with COVID. We're starting to see them come back. So we've been really excited and optimistic about what's going to happen in terms of COVID. I know that's a big factor for all of you as business owners.
Thanks, Austin, for that tidbit. So we got some questions rolling in. The first is from Deborah. Hi, Deborah. Thanks for participating in this one. The question is the service free for local businesses in Beaumont? And I'm sorry we didn't highlight that in the presentation, but to answer your question is 100% yes. This service that Retail Coach is providing all of you one-on-one is something that was built into the contract that the city council approved. So the city's paying for them. They were paying for the data. We're paying for their recruitment, as well as this business and retention aspect. So please utilize these services. Doesn't cost the city anymore if you all use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle's message to me was he would love to have every small business in the community do it. So we absolutely are doing it free of charge. It's included. The city's paid for it. They want to encourage you to use it. So absolutely, anybody that's open to it or is interested, we'd love to run some stuff for you.
So our second one's from Anthony over at Cornerstone Barbecue. Anthony, thanks for joining us today. Yes, we will definitely get you the data set for your business, and I'll reach out to you personally and get you in contact with Austin and his team so we can sit down and kind of run through that back end system that he was showing you. We can run through that and then get you guys reports. All right. And the next
Yeah, thanks.
question is from, do you want to touch on that, Austin?
I was just say thanks, Anthony. We'll get connected with you and make sure we get you the data.
So Michael asks, do we Beaumont consider banning a sister city a partner or a competitor? So that's a really good question. I really consider banning to be a sister city and a partner through the last my entire career that we've been here. Banning residents come over here, Beaumont residents go over there. We're in that one trade area together. It goes back to the statement that the rising tide raises all ships. So things that the city of Beaumont is doing that benefits Banning helps Banning. The aspects that Banning are doing helps Beaumont. As to competition, in my profession, retail attraction in businesses, trying to bring those in is a competitive aspect, as sales tax generated from retailers or restaurants or those types of businesses are delivered. A portion of those are delivered to the local jurisdiction that has those. So um, what I'd like to be able to land the best businesses that we can in Beaumont. To be honest with you, that is our goal. But when I have a business that reaches out to me and we are unable to fulfill their needs, as in they need X amount of square feet on a certain sized lot in an area, and I know I do not have that, and nothing like that is coming online anytime soon, my next call is to my counterpart in the city of Banning or in Calamasa, providing them a free lead, if you will, on a business that we would rather see in this region, although it can't be in the city of Beaumont. I'd rather see it in our neighboring cities and our partners than going to Riverside or going to Ontario or things like that. So while they are a competitor, I'd rather answer it that they're our partner in working together. And then the next question from Michael is, how do you look at the redevelopment effort underway now by Banning for the Banning Regional Airport? It's an exciting project. I haven't had a good amount of time spent on looking at what they're doing, the final product, those types of things. So I'm going to have to reserve judgment for that um, project itself until I familiarize myself with exactly what they're doing. What I can tell you is that the airport itself does serve a purpose and has some value, but if a redevelopment project is done correctly, and it could really bring some nice opportunities to the region.
And
Uh,
real quick on that point, Kyle, from our perspective, totally agree on Banning being a sister community. I think from a development perspective and just overall economic development perspective, Beaumont is in a little bit different life stage than Banning is. They're working on a lot of residential development and a lot of things that Beaumont either already has or has had for a while. And so I think there's a lot of complementary aspects to that. And to your point, Kyle, the rising tide lifts all ships. There's certainly things that are going to work better in Beaumont and things that are going to work better in Banning, but that are ultimately going to help build the overall trade area for Beaumont. So, I think there's a lot of synergy and a lot of complementary aspects to that, just as sister communities.
Exactly. Thanks for adding that on. And so I think the last question that I have, or at least, oh, there's another one that came in. All right. So this one is, I'm wanting to open a business. Can this service help me decide a good local location? I think that this service will definitely aid in finding a location. I'd urge you that if you're looking at opening a business, you can always give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'll call you back directly, and we can kind of go over the type of business you're looking at doing, the locations that are allowed within the city for that type of business to make sure that your zoning and everything's good. And then we can also get you in contact with some of our partners with the small business development centers on mentoring and putting together a business plan and growth projections and those fun things. Because I don't want you to just open a business without as much information as can be provided. And all of those resources I just spoke of, including the Small Business Development Center, are free. That's what our taxpayer dollars go to. So I always encourage small businesses to work with them, and help you in opening a business as well as expanding it or finding new locations. But if you want to, please send me an email and we can start that discussion. So next question, can you give us an idea of what type of business will you would like to see near the proposed warehouse site that will be built on Cherry Valley Boulevard? Um, if if you're talking about at the warehouse site, I have certain answer. And if you're saying what type of businesses you'd like to see be built around the proposed warehouse site, that would be a different answer. In terms of the proposed warehouse site, since it's not in the city limits, but like I said, we're partners in this. I would like to personally see a higher end manufacturing, um, high tech type of building that has good job employment numbers, as opposed to a building that is filled with goods that just go in and out, daily, right? I understand there's a need for goods movement, but I personally like the job aspect, providing local good paying jobs to the residents within this past area, as opposed to just goods movement. If you were really asking what I'd like to see next to the warehouse, and I was way off base on that one. I think that Cherry Valley Boulevard presents, some opportunities for some of those small neighborhood shopping markets. Um, Due to that location, there's probably not enough acreage for a regional draw. So you expect to see smaller scaled service, smaller scale retail, hopefully some mom and pop shops and small businesses that can fill in some of those. I know they just did a supermarket out there, or else that would have been my answer, because that side of town doesn't have a supermarket. So I think a small neighborhood market would help augment the residents within that area and what they're desiring. So another question from Deborah: will there be an effort to keep the Old Town field, like Old Town Temecula, antique specialty shops, mom and pop shops, and so forth? The answer for that is yes. They're in the process of working through the recently adopted Beaumont General Plan, which is a vision for Beaumont, to 2040. The planning department, the community, and city council did a tremendous job on coupling the existing land uses with land uses that would fill the needs and the demand into the future. And I believe that as we move forward with that plan, as we get new projects that come in as a result of that with the land use objectives, hopefully we'll see more antique shops. Hopefully we'll see more specialty shops down there. I know that our city council has expressed a desire to, um, update the downtown area, and I think that those components are in the Beaumont general plan. So I think we as staff have a little bit more tools in our tool belt on aiding in the development of those types of things within that area. Jimmy, would the information collected for individual businesses be available for other businesses to use for marketing purposes? Austin, you wanna tackle that one?
Yeah, we typically will try to do what we can from a individualized perspective for your business. If you wanted us to share that with someone else who you wanted to either co-market with, or you felt like it would be helpful for them to understand, then we can do that. We don't typically share information with another business owner about someone else's individual business without their permission, just because we don't want to give away any competitive aspects. If you're competing with others, don't necessarily want some of that business information out there. So we can do it if you're looking to collaborate or would like to share that with other people. We can certainly do that on your behalf, or give you the data that you can share. We don't typically do that out of the box, just because we want to make sure that we're respecting business owners, and that we're not putting anything out there that they wouldn't like for us to, with either other business owners or someone that may use it in a bad way as opposed to a good way.
Thank you. Alicia, I will definitely get in contact with you. I'll shoot you an email with my phone number and everything, and we can get started on discussing opening a small business within the city. All right.
Kyle, I think for the sake of time, I know everyone is busy, and I think we've run over a little bit here. It's almost 5:20. Yeah, if you have any other questions, please email Kyle. He has our contact info. He'd be happy to connect you with us as well. But thanks so much for coming and joining us. We, as a partner to the city, and as someone who is really looking to grow the community, it's really important for us to connect with business owners and local stakeholders. So please feel free to get our contact info or connect through Kyle. We'd love to talk to you. If there's questions you have for us, if you want to give us a call, we can always do that, or email. But really happy to connect with everyone when we get a chance, and excited to see what we can do from a retail perspective, and see how we can help you grow your business, and help the community as a whole. So just want to say thank you for your time. And like I said earlier, we'll make all of this data available. We'll make this presentation available. It's being recorded, and anything that you need outside of that, please connect with us. We'd love to do whatever we can to help you and be a resource.
Thank you, Austin. And like I said at the beginning, hopefully you found this informational, and not only informational, but valuable for your businesses. So please reach out to me and let me know if you guys have any questions, or if you have any other thoughts on doing any of these in the future.
Great.